Hey there everybody, welcome back to my channel. We're here in front of Breakneck Falls at McConnell's Mill State Park, trying out the voice recovery on the Zoom F2. It's got the 32-bit float. So excuse my slightly janky setup here with the mic. But today we're going to go over the Sigma 150-600 Contemporary. It is the F-mount version for a Nikon DSLR. Now just to get off the bat, affiliate link in the description if you want it. Please use that link, kicks me a couple bucks. But as we get into it, I'll give you the things I don't like about this lens right off the bat, which isn't honestly too many, but it's just things to think about. Now the lens foot only has one screw hole. They should have two, so it keeps your lens from twisting on like a ball head or a gimbal or whatnot for wildlife, so it will eventually twist loose. Now there is a plate you can buy to put on this. It has a little bumper in the front that locks it in place that turns this foot into an Arca Swiss compatible foot because it's not Arca from the factory. Now if you wanted Arca telephoto lens from the factory, I'd look at the Tamron 150-600. Its lens foot's a little bit longer. It's got two screw holes. It does have the Arca dovetail on it. But back to this lens. So we'll start from the bottom and work our way up. The bottom here, the lens mount does have a rubber gasket for some weather sealing to protect your camera. But the lens barrel itself and the front element does not have weather sealing, just something to keep in mind. Sure, you can shoot next to a waterfall, get a couple splashes on it, maybe some condensing mist here and there, but I would not shoot in any actual rain. If you do, use a rain cover like any normal sane person would, even if it is sealed, even if you have a $10,000 lens, use a rain cover in the rain. Now if you want to get the lens foot off, loosen this little thumb screw, twist it, and it'll pop right off. They do give you a rubber bit to put on here to protect your hands from these little nubs that lock into the lens foot itself. It is a f5 to 6.3 lens, so it is kind of dim in the dark, so it doesn't really work the best for film cameras. If you're using 100 or 400 speed film, you're going to need at least 800 speed film or faster in the dark woods to even be able to use 600 because of the, so that you have a fast enough shutter speed to keep your subject from blurring from lens shake. It does have a little window here so you can see your focus range. Not that it's really useful. I don't use it. I don't really know anyone that actually uses that. It's just a carryover from the film days. You can put the Sigma dock on here so you can customize some of the VR settings. So you can have custom 1, custom 2 on here. I don't really use it a whole lot, but for a DSLR, since I don't have IBIS, you can customize this to make the viewfinder a little bit more steady. Next switch up is your VR or IS or optical stabilization, whatever your nomenclature wants to be. Off 1, number 1, that is for a still subject if you're not paying across sky, like if you have a bird in a tree or a deer in the field, that kind of thing, a stationary subject. Number 2 is for your panning across, chasing aircraft or birds in flight, that kind of thing. Personally, I usually leave it off, but on a mirrorless camera, at least for a DSLR, whenever you turn it off, it turns the VR off and it also turns your IBIS off, so you can't really have one on and one off kind of thing. Next switch up, you have your focus range limiter, 2.8 to 10 meters, and then you have 10 meters to infinite, and then you have your full range. That's really just so if you're shooting subjects that are always going to be close to you, that the lens doesn't accidentally hunt way out and have to retract its focus point all the way back. So it makes focus a little bit snappier if you want it. Focus modes, autofocus, manual autofocus override, and manual focus. When it's an MO for manual override, anytime you bump the manual focus on this, it'll override it so that if you're trying to focus on something and it keeps focusing on like the leaves or something behind it, in front of it, you can adjust it yourself and help it lock on a little bit better. Focal lock switch here. So if you have it on 150 and you slide this up to engage it, you can't move the lens whatsoever. But any other increment on here, whenever you move it to it and do a lens lock on like say 180, if you try and push the lens forward to the next further zoom, you can't really do it. But if you back up like I just did, it'll unlock it automatically and then you can zoom back out. This way, if you lock it to 250 and you're walking through the woods, it doesn't creep on you. But then say a deer pops up and you want to zoom on it real quick and you don't want to keep hitting that unlock button, you can zoom back and then zoom forward again real quick without hitting the switch. But it is useful. Like I said, it doesn't creep on you, but as soon as you turn it off and you're walking through the woods, it'll slowly creep down. You could smack it on stuff. Never a fun thing. Now the lens hood is plastic. It can scuff and scratch easy, but that just means it's doing its job. It's protecting your fat front element. The front element is about 95 millimeters. So if you're doing any kind of photography or even video that requires any kind of filter, there's no drop-in filter, so you got to buy a 95 millimeter front filter for the front. So that means, like, if you're doing infrared solar, $200-300 for a filter. If you're doing a variable ND, $200-300. If you need a good CPL, probably $80 to $100. So you gotta keep that in mind as well. But the build quality of it's pretty good. I've never had any problems with it. I've had it for about 5 years. I did have to send it into the shop at Sigma under warranty because one of these tiny little screws fell out. But they replaced it, shipped it back, calibrated the whole lens, cleaned it up for me. Within a week and a half, I got it back to the house. Now, on a DSLR like a D500, this focuses really quickly. You have no problems. You're not going to miss shots because of the camera. It's probably going to be because of you. But you can get this used for about $700-800, maybe new around $1,000. And honestly, for the 2 or 3 entry telephoto zooms that you can get, like the Sigma, Tamron, and Nikon has their 200 to 500. This is the cheaper option. It does work just as good for photo quality. The focusing might be a little bit better here, a little bit worse there than the other two on a DSLR. So if you're looking for something in the affordable range, I'd probably look for one of these used, as long as it's in good shape. Now, adapted on the Nikon Z7 II, it works pretty good for birds in flight and whatnot. Stationary things, it never misses. Video, it's nice and crisp and clear. But it's not as quick and snappy as I would imagine a first party will be as soon as Nikon gets their 200 to 600 out. It resolves 45 megapixels perfectly fine on the full frame camera. Don't have any worries about that. Definitely don't have any worries about this on an entry like D3400 or like a Canon Rebel T6i, T8, whatever. Works great for that. Plus, on the crop body, since it's a 600 and a full frame lens, you get the equivalent of 900 millimeter reach on it, so that's pretty cool. But other than the lens foot, quite honestly, I don't really have any complaints on it. It works great as advertised, and honestly, it's probably one of the best lenses you can get for wildlife when it comes to affordability and how much light it lets in. So here in a second, we're going to go through on the computer and I'll show you some examples over the years of this lens's performance, some video, and we'll move on from here. Okay, so here we have the video examples, and as we can tell, the 150 to 600 Sigma renders really nicely in video. The only thing you really got to keep in mind is if you're going to adapt this to a mirrorless body, you're going to have a lot of chattering in your audio if you have a mic on your camera, but if you put the mic off the camera, it still works pretty good. Now the first two clips was on a D500 DSLR, and these clips right here were on the Z7 II with the baby geese here, the goslings, and then also with the bald eagle and the tree here. This was in DX mode at 900 millimeters. This was also in DX mode in my yard of a robin being fed, and then also DX mode for these slow motion of the barn swallows here. Now the Z7 II only shoots in 1080 120, and it is a 1.5 crop, so this is about 500-600 millimeters, not the full 900 equivalent. Okay, so here we are under the photo examples. This was at a rodeo. This is ISO 12000 because it's a f5.6 at 300 millimeters. Still pretty usable. This is on a crop body, D500. As we move on, we have the A10 here at an air show in Cleveland. Most of these plane pictures are air shows in Cleveland. And tracked that pretty nice and well. Nice, sharp, crisp. Then we have the Geico Sky Typers here. Also nice and crisp. Tracked the front of the planes perfectly with the slowed shutter speed for the prop blur. And again with the prop blur, on the P51D here. Nice and sharp. As his landing gear was going up. We have an F-35 passing by here, showing its bomb bay doors open. Same F-35 going, I think the pilot commented on my Instagram post saying like 730 miles an hour, something like that. It's transonic they call it, just before the sound barrier. So if lens keeps up with this, honestly, you're not going to have any problems with it. Your camera would be the slow part, really, not really the lens. We have the Thunderbirds here doing their mirror pass. And then what everyone does whenever they get the lens, they take pictures of the moon. Does a good job at that. Got a bald eagle here in the tree, nice and sharp. Actually, one of my favorite pictures of all time. We got an osprey here flying by the kayak. I believe this is called a hummingbird moth. It has another name that I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was pretty cool. This was like a macro shot on the, a macro-ish shot on the Sigma. ISO 600, 600 millimeters. Little chickadee picking at a spiderweb nest. Another osprey flying over the kayak. You can also do landscapes with the lens. It works pretty good with that. This was, I think, 5 or 6 photos stitched together at 150 millimeters. So I can get a real wide shot using one big lens and zoom way out there. I think this was all like 5-6 miles away, honestly. Another bird in flight. We got the blue heron here, great blue heron. Mergansers. I mean, as you can tell, like the limiting factor in this for tracking and speed is probably going to be your camera body, or if you're using it on a adapted mirrorless, it's probably going to be the like FTZ adapter, or whatever adapter you're using is going to be the bottleneck for the most part. Another cool little bird. I'm failing at this right now. I can't remember the name of this bird. That's awful. We have an adolescent bald eagle in flight. This is on the Z7 II. Nice and sharp once it renders out the 1:1 here. There we go. Focused way out there, grabbed it. Red-winged blackbird, nice and sharp again. Doesn't really miss. We have a flamingo from the National Aviary. Venezuelan bird, I believe, from the National Aviary. Nice, crisp, and sharp as soon as it renders here. Some of these I rendered 1:1 as imported, some of them I didn't. There we go. Looks gorgeous, honestly. So yeah, honestly, yeah, if you need a bang for buck, super tele affordable lens for your DSLR or mirrorless, the Sigma's great as long as you can ignore some of the negatives that I mentioned earlier in the video. Hopefully this was useful for you, and if it was and you really want the lens new off Amazon, you can use my affiliate link down below. I'd really appreciate that. And happy shooting. I'll see you out there.